Dr. Conant, please.
Thank you, John and Kathy, for organizing this, and thank you, Tony and Lisa from the Awareness Party. I've agreed to be an advisor to this party. I think it's very important that we get some ethics back into politics and into science, of course. Now, let me say at the outset, I do not believe that fluoridation is the worst problem facing this planet. There are far worse problems. But the good news is, this is the easiest one to fix. All you need is a strong wrist. Just got to turn off a tap. You know, when the political will is there, it's as easy to end like that. I thought when walking to the village council, that meeting, I said to my wife, I said, this is going to be easy, Ellen, this is going to be easy. I said, when they hear what I read this afternoon, there's no way they're going to continue to do this. It took us 7.5 years to get it out of our village. It ain't easy. It ain't easy. Okay, so this afternoon, as will this PowerPoint be. This PowerPoint will be on Lisa's website. So this afternoon, fluoridation is a poor medical practice. It's unethical. The evidence of any benefit is very weak. This was the big surprise for me because I assumed that the issue was going to revolve around safety, and I was expecting the evidence that it actually worked to reduce tooth decay would be strong. But incredibly, it's not strong at all. It's extremely weak. Next, there's no adequate margin of safety to protect the brain from harm and other known health effects. And let's stress that at the beginning. There's no argument whatsoever that fluoride causes harm. It's damaged millions of people's lives in India, China, parts of Africa and Mexico, where there are high natural levels of fluoride in the water. People's lives have been ruined. It damages their bones, it damages their brains, their endocrine system, and so on. That's not an argument. That's not the argument. The argument is there a sufficient gap between the doses which have caused harm in India, China, parts of Africa, and Mexico, and the doses that we're likely to get in a fluoridated community, and is that gap sufficient to protect everyone? Not just the average person, but everyone, including the very young, the very old, the people with poor kidney function, and so on and so on. And I will show to you emphatically that there is no adequate margin of safety. Next, why does the New Zealand Ministry of Health continue to push fluoridation? The $64,000 question. And lastly, the next steps. And the next steps, of course, is where you come in. I mean, this is useless. If you go away this afternoon and say, I heard this good talk by this guy from America, so I'm going to pull somebody, and he was very convincing that fluoridation is a bad idea, but you can't remember any of the arguments, it's useless. So hopefully, if this is any good at all, it will be to arm you, to give you the ammunition so that you can win these arguments. You can win these arguments with your friends, you can win these arguments in public meetings, and so on. And of course, as I said, this PowerPoint will be available to you, as will with the book. So it's a poor medical practice. In the 1930s, there was a short experiment where they added iodine to the drinking water to fight goiter and other aspects of poor thyroid function. Didn't work because some people were getting too much iodine and they got overactive thyroid glands, so they stopped that. Then they added fluoride to the water starting in 1945, and since then they haven't used the public water supply to deliver any other medicine. None. And why is that? Because it's a clumsy tool to deliver medicine. Yes, you can get your engineers to control the fluoride concentration at the waterworks, but you don't control the dose, which is what hurts you. It's not concentration, it's dose. The dose depends upon how many liters of water that you drink. It's concentration times volume. It's milligrams per liter times number of liters. Now, I was in Australia a few weeks ago, and miners in Western Australia are drinking 10 to 12 liters of water a day. They're going to be wrecking their bones with that. In 30 years from now, these guys are going to be limping all over the place. So, It's the dose you can't control. And ask any pharmacist, is there any drug in your store that you can give to anybody and tell them you don't have to worry about the dose, take as much as you want? No. He'd look at you as if you were stupid. Of course not. The second question is, it goes to everybody. When you put it in the water, it's going to go to the very young, it's going to go to babies that are bottle fed, it's going to go to people that are sick, people that have poor nutrition, it's going to go to everybody. Ask the pharmacist, is there any drug that you can give to anybody? No, not at all. Is there any drug that you can put out there, that the prescription drug that you don't have a doctor overseeing for side effects? No. Is there any drug out there that are prescribed that you don't have a health agency carefully monitoring the whole population for side effects? No. There have been practically no health studies in fluoridated countries. Maybe a couple in New Zealand. None. They're just not looking. It's not a nutrient. Some proponents still talk about fluoride being a nutrient. There's not one single biochemical process in the body that needs fluoride. To demonstrate that something is an essential nutrient, you have to starve the animal of this substance, and if it's a nutrient, they develop a disease. You know, if you starve the old British sailors of vitamin C, they developed scurvy. That's why we called them limeys, remember? Limeys because they took the limes for vitamin C. But the way they found scurvy was they found that there was this nutrient that we weren't getting. They've never demonstrated that any animal has got a deficiency for fluoride, yeah?
They actually mixed the limes with the rum, otherwise they couldn't get the sailors to eat them.
Oh, that's excellent, excellent, excellent. Very good. Okay. So it's not a nutrient, but of course, as I've already mentioned, it is extremely toxic. Not only does it interfere with enzymes, but it also interferes with G proteins, which are a little complicated, but basically G proteins are involved in getting messages across membranes. This is not something you want to interfere with. The chemicals used are not pharmaceutical grade. You know, dentists don't believe this when they're told this. These chemicals are obtained from the wet scrubbing system of the phosphate fertilizer industry. A spray of water captures two toxic gases, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride, and left to themselves, those gases have decimated the local environment, damaged the vegetation, crippled cattle. And after about 100 years, you know, we're slow learners, they decided they had to capture those gases, and a spray of water did the trick. The spray of water converts that stuff into hexafluorosilicic acid. Now here we get to something which is, there are many places where Monty Python could have written the script, and I'm happy to tell you, if you think I'm a bit crazy, then blame it on John Cleese, because I was at college with John Cleese and played soccer with him, and that will sometimes show during this talk. You know, I can only remain serious for about 5 minutes, so I'll try. Anyway, this hazardous waste, this classification is it's hazardous waste, can't be dumped into the sea by international law. It can't be dumped locally because it's too concentrated. Get this. But if someone buys it from them, it's a product. And once it's a product, then it's no longer has the cradle-to-grave tracking regulations for hazardous waste. And the people that are buying this stuff from the phosphate fertilizer industry are the public waterworks, public utilities. It's a poor medical practice. The official classification in the United States from the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is that fluoride is an unapproved drug. It's never been subjected to the randomized clinical trials for any other drug on the market. Even though this is the most prescribed medicine in America, going to 180 million Americans every day, in every glass of water they drink, it's never been regulated by the FDA. However, get ready for Monty Python, it's coming in soon. They are. The FDA does regulate fluoridated toothpaste, bless them. And here's a packet of fluoridated toothpaste from the United States, Crest in this case, and on the back it says drug facts. So even Crest disagrees with the New Zealand Ministry of Health. Do not swallow. Only use a pea-sized amount, and that's a pea-sized amount. And here's the warning. This is the required warning from the FDA. Keep out of the reach of children under 6 years of age. If more than used for brushing is accidentally swallowed, get medical help or contact a poison control center right away. Well, I'm sure you're all wondering what a pea-sized amount of fluoride, how much pea-sized amount of toothpaste at 1,000 parts per million, how much fluoride is that? Answer, it's 1/4 of a milligram, which is the equivalent of 250, 1/4 liter of water at 1 part per million. So we're talking about 1 large glass of water. This is 250 milliliters right here. Now, Monty Python. Well, I think, John, we should put the same warning in the kitchen. Right then. Right then. Over the tap, do not swallow. Most countries don't fluoridate their water, but according to World Health Organization data, their children's teeth are just as good as those that do. This is World Health Organization data. We've plotted it, but it's their data for 12-year-olds, tooth decay, from the 1960s to the present. And you see that tooth decay is coming down as fast in all these countries as the fluoridated countries. So there's 4 fluoridated countries here, the yellow, orange, and brown, and the other countries are the non-fluoridated ones. And if you look down here, you see the tooth decay in all these countries for 12-year-olds, it's a wash. You can't tell the difference whether that kid's grown up in a fluoridated community or a non-fluoridated community. Okay? That's the big stuff. Now, the key question to ask is when the fluoride is damaging the growing tooth cells by some biochemical mechanism, what's it doing to the other tissues in the body? And I'm concerned about the baby's brain being exposed to 250 times more than mother's milk. This is what Arvid Carlson said. He wondered what would happen if an increase of exposure through bottle-fed babies would have on the brain. He said that in 1978. Since then, here's the National Research Council. It is apparent that fluorides have the ability to interfere with the functions of the brain. There have now been over 100 animal experiments showing that fluoride damages the brain. When the NRC looked at this, there were 5 studies which showed a lowering of IQ, and now there's 24. There's 24. One was published just a few weeks ago. These studies mainly come from China, from Iran, India, and Mexico, that fairly moderate exposure to fluoride lowers IQ. We're left with 2 preposterous notions. What parent in their right mind would put their children's teeth above their brains? And what government would support a program aimed at lowering tooth decay by at most 0.6 of 1 tooth surface if it lowered the IQ of the population by even a small amount? It's interesting, 0.6 of a tooth decay and 0.59 IQ points for, okay. And the answer is, of course, New Zealand would be prepared to do that. Just quickly, osteosarcoma. You can see the science and the politics here. Bassin, who's a dentist, got her doctoral thesis in Harvard, and she found that young boys exposed to fluoridated water in their 6th, 7th, or 8th years, this corresponds to the mid-childhood growth spurt when the bones are turning over rapidly, and a 5 to 7-fold increased risk of developing osteosarcoma by the age of 20. Osteosarcoma is a bone cancer which is frequently fatal for young men. So this is where I say we might be killing some young men with this practice. Not many, because it's a fairly rare cancer. Now, the politics. Her boss, Chester Douglas, who is a consultant for Colgate, a promoter of fluoridation, just somehow for the next 4 years failed to tell anybody that his graduate student had found this, including going to the British Fluoridation Society 1 year later in 2002 and saying to the British Fluoridation Society, my work shows no relationship between fluoridation and osteosarcoma. Oh, they were so pleased to hear that. But he didn't tell them about his graduate student's work. Totally unethical, totally unethical. I mean, he could have told them and given his reservations, but not to tell them Unacceptable. She eventually published her study with 3 co-authors. In the same issue of the journal, up pops Douglas again and puts in a letter discounting her findings. He says, my larger study will not show the same results as Bassin. And promoters of fluoridation have been using this promise of a study, which is unpeer-reviewed and unpublished, to knock out a well-conducted study which found that effect. And that includes the new National Health and Medical Research Council in Australia. And Douglas promised his study for the summer of 2006, and we are still waiting for Chester Goddo Douglas to produce this study. That's the politics of the thing. Thyroid function, several lines of information indicate that fluoride exposure has an effect on thyroid function, and if fluoride lowers thyroid function, it would explain the delayed eruption of teeth, the lowered IQ in children, and also the fact that we have a huge increase in hypothyroidism in the United States. The pineal gland. Jennifer Luke showed in England that fluoride accumulates in the human pineal gland, which makes an important hormone called melatonin, which is like a biological clock. It deals with the onset of puberty, jet lag, sleep patterns, and aging. And in animal studies, she found that animals exposed to fluoride lowered their melatonin production and shortened the time to puberty. When she looked around in the literature, she found only one study that dealt with anything to do with puberty and fluoride, and it was the second trial in the United States, from 45 to 55, Newburgh, Kingston. And she found that the young girls in the fluoridated community were menstruating on average 5 months earlier than the non-fluoridated community, which they didn't think was significant at the time. Now, the science is on our side. If you go to FAN New Zealand's website, you'll find the scientific arguments. If you go to our website, you'll find the scientific arguments. You'll find the health database that my son put together. You will also find that you can access this report online from our site. You can search it electronically from our site. So you've got access to that. You've also got access to this video. It's only 28 minutes long. It's 15 scientists, 3 scientists who wrote this. Arvi Carlson, Nobel Prize winner, 2 former EPA, US EPA scientists, Sir Ian Chalmers, and a few other distinguished, Phyllis Mullinex, who did the first animal experiment with fluoride on the brain, myself, Vivian Howard, really good, important people. And that's important for you to share with people, because those who think that people opposed to fluoridation are twerps, idiots, Flat Earth Society, when they look at this, there's no way. I think you do better just to get people to look at this rather than argue. Don't argue with them. Just try to persuade them to look at this with an open mind and then have the argument afterwards. And on that tape also is not only this on the tape that you can buy, but also the 28-minute interview with Chris Bryson, and also a 59-minute interview I had from the crew at Alex Jones' show there. And that's the best interview I've ever done. That's 58 minutes of it. So you've got a lot of ammunition there. You have more ammunition today, and of course our book. So with this, you can really, we wrote this so that citizens would no longer be put down by the white coats. Because you say to the white coat who tries to pull rank on you, I'm a doctor, I'm a professional, and you're only a citizen. You say, fine, have you read the book? Oh, you haven't? Oh, well, when you've read the book, then maybe we can have this discussion further. So this levels the playing field for you, at least until they've read it. Then you might be in trouble. But anyway, you can try. Thank you.